Hello and welcome to episode 195 of Page One, the Writers Podcast. I'm Marco.
And I'm Tarek.
And thanks for joining us on the podcast, where we like to speak to writers of all kinds about their writing careers, find out how they got into the industry, and try and get as many hints and tips from them as possible. And if you have been listening recently, you'll know that we've had a special series of industry episodes where we've been speaking to agents and editors, and those have actually been video interviews that you can watch on our YouTube channel as well. But we are, I guess, getting back to normal this week by speaking with, well, I was going to say an author, but also a screenwriter as well.
Yes.
Multi-talented Ilaria Bernardini.
Ilaria Bernardini is, as Marco says, she's written for a variety of medium. Sorry,
I always get it wrong. I feel media is plural, but I don't know if you're meant to say mediums or media.
When it's I don't know.
Things.
Maybe if someone could write in and let us know.
Yeah, I mean it's probably something we should know, but there you go.
But
we like to learn, so yes, please do write in and correct it.
She's written for a number of publications: Vogue, Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone. And actually, that was how she got her start. She's then written a number of books. She's written a number of scripts. She's adapted her books for the screen. She's written, translations. It's really a wide-ranging stuff she's done. Really impressive.
And she has a really interesting way into publishing that she doesn't recommend anyone follow. I mean, she wrote as a teenager to publishers with manuscripts. She then found the addresses and wrote to authors and left them her manuscript, and it was actually through one of those authors that she got her first publishing deal. It's an unusual
another person who breaks the rules that everyone is told never to do. Which
exactly.
Frustrating.
And she doesn't recommend you follow her stalking, as she put it, but it worked for her.
And she's worked with the Russo brothers.
Yeah, on Citadel, which is, I think, the most expensive TV show.
Yeah, I didn't realise that. That's nuts. I've not actually watched it yet. I need to watch it.
So it's apparently, because I thought it was just the American set or British set one, but apparently they're doing sort of spinning off that main show, different Citadel shows around the world that are all linked up and then coming back in. So she's been working on the Italian one. But she writes in English, she writes in Italian, she translates from one language to the other. It's a really interesting chat, and so we will get straight into it after a quick advert for our writer's notebook, and then we'll be back at the end of the podcast with a bit more chat and to let you know about next week's guest.
I should also quickly say, for those that don't know, the Russo brothers are, of course, the brothers behind the various Marvel movies, Avengers movies, Captain America movies.
I was assuming knowledge there, but perhaps that was wrong. Yes.
But anyway, on with the podcast.
The blank page. To some, it's terrifying, an obstacle to overcome. But we prefer to think of it as an opportunity, a blank canvas to be filled with all of the adventures and characters in our head. So how to overcome that fear? Well, we all know the best advice for a writer is write. Seriously, get words on the page and more will follow.
But what about later, when you start trying to pull those threads of what you've written together? What about the character you wrote about way back at the start? Who was she again? What was she carrying? And where did she leave the MacGuffin that she now really needs in the third act? Think about all those top thrillers you like to read, or that amazing drama you just watched. What did they all have in common? Structure and planning.
As aspiring writers ourselves, we've tried many different methods to try and organise all the thoughts about the stories we want to tell. We've been there searching for a piece of scrap paper to note something down, or making a quick note on our phone in between meetings.
Or sometimes we'll make a note in whatever notebook we're carrying, or a document on our laptop so we don't forget that great idea. Let's be honest, it can all be a bit messy and it's easy to lose track of everything. And that's when we realised it's not just a story that needs structure and planning, but the way we gather all of our thoughts about it as well.
And so we made Page One. Page One is more than just another notebook. It's a place to put down all your ideas for your latest project, divided into easy-to-use sections that will help you plan your story, so that when that blank page comes calling, you're ready to answer. And then afterwards, once it's written, we realised you need to plan how to let people read it, so we included a section relating to submissions.
Each one is designed for one project, whether you want to write a book, screenplay, a comic, or any other kind of story. We truly believe that when you use it, it will help you get to the main event, writing your story. So we hope this helps.
We can't wait to read what you come up with.
And remember, every story starts with page 1.
Did you always want to be a writer?
I think so. I think that my first attempt of writing a book, I was 15. So I tried to publish when I was 15, and I remember this awkward and weird conversation with this publisher that I managed to track down, and I went like with the bus and managed to have an appointment. And I was there, and I sent her this very punk piece, I would define it. It was very experimental. But she was this very kind woman, and actually she's now a very important agent in Italy. And she sort of listened and read to that completely deconstructed piece of writing, which was a mix of poems and, I don't know, very experimental. And kind of I left that office with few bags of writers I should read. I like to try, and she was seeing what I was trying to do, but not accomplishing at all. And in a way, there were voids clearly in what had been reading, and so she helped me realize some of the things that were happening literature-wise. And but the urge of writing was there since the beginning. I come from a very big family. It was very messy, very noisy, and the only space I think I could find for a bit of quiet, a bit of thinking thoughts through for a while by myself was the writing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite unusual, I suppose, to have that, to chase down a publisher like that and talk with them. But also that very good that she gave you that time and did take you seriously in a way.
I constantly re-meet her now that she's a very important agent, a very important author. She has changed a bit her life. And I keep on telling her how, life-changing in a way it is, and how incredibly open she was, because it's literally a high school girl. And I mean, we all know how busy these people are reading all the things. So I guess maybe she saw something, probably. She said, not completely crazy, but also, she was probably just, a mother taking care of one of the Italian kids around.
You've written for a number of big magazines, publications, Vogue, Vanity Fair, Rolling Stone, etc. Was this, and I kind of wondered, was this your first route into kind of paid writing work? Did you start off going down this route first?
I think I was doing two things at the same time, and I was doing very off super experimental fringe theater, and I was writing these kind of pieces and going around in festival, mixing, body movement, screams, and Anais Nin inspired writing, something completely, cringe. And on another side, I was trying to find a first-person singular with which to attack pop culture. So that was probably the idea that led me to try do more, cinema pieces and get to interview people. So for a while, I had this column on GQ where I would interview people that had been very successful, but I would ask them things about, what were they afraid at 4 a.m.? Were they scared about, death, dying? They cried. Most of them eventually cried during the yeah, they did. And so I was trying different ways of writing at the same time. After a short while, I was also a voice for, because, writing didn't pay. I was living by myself when I was 18 and paying my own university, etc. So in a way, that wasn't meeting all the needs, university, the room and everything. So I had trained as an actress also, whilst doing that cringe theater thing. And I had a trained voice. So I was also doing speaker and voiceovers that do actually really pay well in Italy. At least they did in the 90s. So I was the voice to MTV Italy. I was the voice of MTV, of the old MTV channel, the one that says, tonight at 8:30, and that kind of voice. So one thing led to the other, and I was always taking, the coffee at the coffee machine. I was always meeting this a really cool host. She was doing a very camp show, very queer. It was a very fun show that every night was like live from 9 and to midnight, and we had so much fun at the coffee machine that she just told me, why don't you become one of the junior writers, like join us? And so from a voice I tried to become her voice. So there was also this other kind of writing for TV, writing for someone else, trying to inhabit another body, another voice. And so it came in so many ways, the right posture.
So yeah, it seems that a very unusual, I suppose, way into writing and all these different methods that and avenues that you had open to you. Were you still trying to write books at that time, or did you go back to that a bit later?
No, I was still writing. I was writing books. I was actually writing about this phase of my life, about trying to figure out things. So I have two kind of novels I've always been writing. One that I always write in this first person, which is things that happen in my life. And I do sometimes feel the need to put them in a book. It can be that, the figuring out, the beginning of all things, a sort of university, just writer, what am I doing, lost, the changing 300 bedrooms, that kind of phase. And then I redid it when I divorced, or when I was alone with my son. The Forest is actually one of these books. The one that is coming out now in June in the UK is one of these books. And now I've just have one out in Italy, which is about my father that hasn't been speaking to me for 10 years. So sometimes I do go back to this void that I found when I was 18, 19, and I used to, talk about, pain, fear, divorce, things like that. So when I was 18, 19, and I was doing that, I was doing university and the papers and the magazines and TV and these things. I was also trying to write about this. And again, I found the, addresses of few authors in Italy that I really respect and admired. And I left them at their houses, in their, in their portineria. I don't know how you call them, like
Post
the front
box.
door.
Yeah.
Or to the guy that works in the.
Okay. Yeah.
I just left it. I think like I left 40 properly manuscripts, and one called, and he was the one that made me publish for the first time. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Is that the normal approach in Italy, or is there an agent?
Not. Probably
is
not.
there? Because obviously in the UK, the standard approach is
agent.
Send your books to your agent, find an agent, get the agent to the publisher. I mean, is that how it works now in Italy?
No, that's stalkery. That's completely wrong. Probably I shouldn't have done that, and probably now it's not. It's even more difficult because they receive an amount of manuscripts, which way it's not the number. Are way bigger, but I didn't have an agent, but I was good at tracking people down, which makes me very, baby reindeer of me at the moment. And I did, but I have to say, this writer Matteo Bibianchi that then published me, and I know that I knew back then that he was a scout for a publishing house, so. And then when I started writing for MTV, I invited him in the show. So I made him become a writer. So I think we're even.
Even, yeah.
Am I right in saying that you've also written short stories?
Yeah.
So I kind of wondered, what was your process in terms of, getting that first book written? Was it a case of kind of cutting your teeth on shorter fiction before you went for something bigger? Or was it writing these kind of self-reflective kind of, books that became something more?
So the first novel was a novel, and it was in this first person, etc. And the second one were short stories. So I tried fiction, I think, or to not talk about myself and to try find plots through the short stories. That to these days, I think 10 books after, or maybe 9 or 11, I don't remember. It's my favorite, and it didn't sell anything. I don't know how it is in England, but the short stories, like you go to even your, the publisher that really loves you, really wants to publish you, and you say, but it's short story. They would just say, no, so make it go to someone else.
Yeah, it's a tough sell, I think.
Very tough sell. I'm a avid reader of short stories, so I don't know why but So it went really, I mean, it wasn't a big thing, but yeah, I think I was experimenting with the tool, and that gave me a way of being with stories for an amount of time that I was able to handle and to try different things. And I did the same mistake like 5 years after. I did another collection of short story, which resetted all my sales. Like to do the contracts after, I just went back to 900 copies. Yeah, and that was a monographical because I had just become a mother. So I did the motherhood themed short story collection, which was even more niche and even more unsellable in a way. Or maybe now it would be a bit sellable, very shitty, very motherhood kind of space. But back then, not really. And there were 9 different short stories, and, from the pregnancy to when I had my son. They weren't all about me, but I did this other collection. I love short stories. I really want to experiment also with poems, but I don't dare ask anybody to have them.
Well, I was
even harder
to
to sell than short stories.
Yeah. I was going to say that obviously you've written across a whole range of different media. You've written, the experimental theatre to begin with, but then the TV stuff, the short stories, the books, and scripts, as we'll talk about later as well. But is your process the same when you approach these things, or do you have a different process when you're doing a different type of medium?
I think it's a very different process in a way. I think the amount of the dedication and the focus and the complexity of writing a novel comes with a very different, you create a space for it that is very austere and it's a marathon for a very long time. You cannot share with anybody if the idea works or not, but you only, have to believe that it works, and many times it doesn't. And so I think it comes with fear and with doubts. It's very different. So for this kind of very painful and horrifying job that is the one of writing novels, I try to be very diligent and have a very organized routine. So it's always the morning. I always show up to the page, to the Word document, whatever happens. I don't... the usual thing I think many people do, they don't have the phone. I cancel everything, and it's just that kind of focus that if someone interrupts you will just scream, because the train of thoughts for me, it's so complicated to carry. It's a very big heavy lifting. I find writing for TV very fun and easy. It's very different. It has to do drinking coffee together, and I eventually decided also to be more in the cinema and doing these things, because the writing of novels is such a lonely process, and it's so long that eventually you sometimes come out of 3-4 years of you're very much in your mind. It's tricky for your mental health and your well-being and everything. So eventually I did need to laugh a bit and to have colleagues and have walk out of the house sometimes and not think that that story was completely everything of my life. And cinema, I love working with directors, especially more than with other writers. So it's even different. Like I put myself in a position of making sure that the material they imagine, the vision they have, can land in a way that they will be able to express it in their most free and beautiful way. So I'm completely, slave. In between a shaman and a slave. Like I sort of try to hold a space in where things like this can happen, with big respect, with the idea that a movie is very, very much something of the director, and a writer is serving sort of this process in many, many occasions. Sometimes you can be the one that come up with a script, and then you attach the director and you try to do the other thing around. But what really seduces, what I really like, is being in a room with a director and being there and understanding that.
Yeah, often screenwriters will say that it's a script is a very technical document. It's sort of like a blueprint for, as you say, the director to then, and the actors to make the film. And so it's almost, as a writer, is it slightly less personal as something, as a process that you're doing, because it is necessarily collaboration that you're
Well,
you're
I
doing
found
it?
I found it very moving and not technical. I don't know, maybe from the cringe theaters of the beginning, but I find myself, crawling on a floor, trying a scene, crying, putting that music that will help us do something, exchanging references. It's a very creative, exciting space that I find has a part of course, like writing books or writing for television or writing anything of technicalities. There are you have to be able in a way to deliver, to give a payoff to the things you planned. There's this thing you always have to take into account, and the tools you're using have an amount of technical ability that it's needed, but at the end it's rock and roll creative stuff as usual, I think.
And as you said, your latest novel is We Will Be Forest. And I should say as well that you've written a whole bunch of books which I don't think have been translated into English yet. So I do want to chat about them as well. But your newest one is coming out in June in English language. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what that book's about?
So this one is one of those books that I write eventually to try and figure out things that are happening, but not because they're not like diaries. I don't need them for myself in a way, but I sometimes do experience that there are things that are happening that could be, useful also for others, or interesting also for others going through something similar. So We Will Be Forest is the story of these two women that find themselves into very complicated aftermath of things that have happened in their life. One after a divorce with a tiny kid, never having lived by herself in a way, and the other one after a brain stroke, and she's having panic attacks. Now she's out of the hospital, but she had this completely, bomb in her life that has disrupted all of the paradigms of the previous ideas of life and happiness and what it meant to be alive. So they meet each other in these times of drought, and because the one that had a brain stroke is kind of good with plants, and the other one has moved in a kind of semi-destroyed house with dead plants, they just decide, why don't we do this thing together in the seasons that will come now, that we are completely unable to be back in life as functioning human beings. And so they start planting, and season after season, this thing of the botanical practice plus the commitment that has his mega failures and his twists, of course, to grow into this luminous forest that help them in times of drought and disaster.
And it's been very well received. It was nominated for the Strega Prize, and as I think your previous book, The Portrait, was as well. How important is that as an author to get that sort of recognition, or does it not really matter to you in that way?
No, it really matters. I'm always self-deprecating. Like, I know it so matters. Like this last novel, I've sort of decided not to go for the Strega, the one that is out now, and it's every morning I wake up saying I did the wrong thing. Why didn't I go? Like, so it's very important. Maybe just because I'm insecure, I don't know. And it is important for the book. The books, they come out, they have this short window where you have the stage for you in a way. And it's, 4 weeks where you're massively on the papers or on radios or podcasts and things like this. And then eventually prizes do help, and you would do anything, for you. It's like a kid that, you've just done, and you would do anything for him to have a longer breather and a longer time to be alive. And the prizes just, bring you more into the bookshops. You can go and talk about more about it. And it's also a beautiful community, that Strega Prize, the authors that start, traveling together. In Italy, you go to the tiny villages. You're speaking about what you've been obsessing by yourself for 5 years, eventually with more people and more people and more people. And some of these books, like The Forest, there is something that it was probably my most successful novel in Italy out in terms of reception, of reviews, of numbers, of everything. And in a way, it's one of the tiniest. And the idea that something, is sort of auto-planting itself everywhere, it's exactly the point of this book. So for a book like this one, that the premises were, just this thing happened in my life. It was so tiny, so painful. But then you try to make, like an origami, like you try to make this pain blossom and this tiny seed of something that you think you saw about life, that it's more universal. And when it happened, it's a miracle. And with the forest, it was a bit of a miracle. In Milan, they were using, the hashtag Faremo Foresta. In Italy, it's Faremo Foresta. It was used for so many things apart from the book, like meetings at the office, neighborhoods that decided to work together as a community. Faremo Foresta, we will be forest, because the concept is inside. Is that you can grow your own forest in a way.
Yeah, that's cool.
And see, you were saying that obviously that was one of your books that was in Italian that was translated. How does the process work in terms of deciding which ones will come over? Is that like a publisher decision that looks at sales? Is it all technical stuff, or what's the process there?
Well, all my first books haven't been translated yet, because maybe I didn't have also, the agents, all the numbers and everything. I think it comes with the idea that it is translated because it might be interesting also for other countries to read. So they go to the London Book Fair or the Frankfurt Book Fair, your agents, and they pitch it to the other countries, to the other publishers, and all publishers have scouts and readers, and they're constantly looking for things in translation or not, and eventually sometimes it happens. So The Forest and The Girls Are Good, some of the books do go this way, and others, like The Portrait, I wrote it directly in English, so I did the opposite. I wrote it in English, it came out in England and then US, and then I translated it into Italian. So my usual publisher in Italy just knew the books there.
So you did the translation yourself into the Italian version? Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was pure madness. I had thought about it at the beginning because I won't get too philosophical, but in a way translation is like the same book doesn't exist. You get into, and if you are the author of both books, you do think that you're about to translate a sentence that is just a plot, but actually as soon as you're touching the sentence, you're also touching the plot, the character, and everything. And I think a translator probably doesn't get as obsessed with the idea of the sound. Does it sound as amazing in English as it is in or what I think it's amazing in Italian? Has it got the same solfeggio, the same intention? Politically, this word, does it mean the same thing? Does it becomes like it's it's madness. It's pure madness. I was ill with it. So, for example, The Forest being translated in English, I thought I cannot go through this again. Also because in a way, English to Italian for me can be one process. Italian to English, it's way lengthier, longer. I don't have all the nuances in English. So if it's not generated in that first language at the beginning to get to the other one, would have been crazy. So for The Forest, I found this incredible. She's an author, Livia Franchini. She's an author and a poet. She teaches at Goldschmidt in London. And I had read one of her books, which is published by my same publisher, Mondadori, in Italy. And I thought that she had a beautiful rhythm, like her solfeggio. I don't know if you said it was just so beautiful. And The Forest has a very specific rhythm. It's a monologue that you can read out loud on a stage. So I really needed someone that had a wittiness, something funny, but something completely heartbreaking, and the rhythm. And I think that Livia was perfect because she could understand both perfectly the Italian, but she's properly, British. She really knows the language in a way that I don't. So
it's very interesting because often, obviously, when authors sell their books, they get the foreign rights for their books and it's translated into German, Norwegian, Brazilian, Portuguese or whatever. They'll never know.
They'll never know.
If it's a good translation or a bad translation.
And that's in a way is liberating. Like it's better.
Maybe that's right.
The Girls Are Good, which in Italy it's called Corpo Libero. It's this book I wrote that they made a series for Paramount of it. In elite gymnastics and the abuse in elite gymnastics. It came out in like Lithuania, Greece, places like this. And I just look, the cover is pretty, like that.
Yeah.
Nice, it's pink, like it. Yeah. So
Yeah,
easy.
it's interesting. And I want to ask as well about obviously that decision that you made to write the portrait in English, and you know why did you do that, and are there certain stories that you think I'm going to write this in English or I'm going to write this in Italian?
Yeah, I think there were two main reasons. One, I'm a very fast writer in Italian, and I was getting bored of like the cliche of my voice. I know what I do, like I do things when I write that I had at that time grown like tired of. I couldn't hear my voice anymore, and I wanted to try and go in a story without being able in a way to do what I was able to do, but without being profoundly in a story. And in another way, the story arrived completely in English. It's set in London. It's people like me that are maybe often in England and London. They do have a story there, but their English will forever be from somewhere else. It's lost in translation many times. It's people, that maybe have been there for 25 years, but they come from Italy, from Greece, and the characters are like this. One lives in Paris, but she's very worldly, even though she's from Paris and was raised in Greece. And the other one is American, and it's this kind of houses where you will meet people, with different levels of English, and the fact that they would meet with this specific English in this case made sense. And also, I wanted to go slower. And it took me 4 years, in fact, to write it. And for me, English has some barriers. I have to think more, about is this, the right construction for this sentence? Do you even say this? Is this a way of saying that? And it was good for me to slow down and to try and have a very different pace in which to think about things. It's a very, very complex novel for me, has backstories, short stories inside. It's about a writer and an artist. It has so many layers. And the idea that I took all the time that I had to make the structure work also came with the idea that writing it down was slower. And it was fascinating. There are other very interesting aspects that, for example, it's a very sentimental, emotional, romantic book. And I would never allow myself in Italian to be very romantic. I would not write ti amo whilst writing, a love scene in English. And I do find the same in scripts. I'm able to, I feel in Italian, I feel they're too baroque. It's too much. And I never do it. And I try to have this very minimalist writing. Whilst in English, like, I don't know why. I love seeing, like, yeah.
Is it almost like you're, I mean, this is getting cliche or whatever, but like you're almost a different, you as a writer are slightly different when you're writing in a different language then?
Maybe, or I've asked myself, maybe it's because in my mother tongue, all the things that were said to me, like emotional, the screams and the laughter and the, were happened in Italian. So maybe talking about emotions in English is easier. No, maybe I'm just dissociated. I don't know. But I was looking at the scenes, and there were things that, two lovers were able to say to each other that were way more direct than I would ever be able to do in Italian, or for now.
And the process of that, in terms of, obviously in Italian you'll have, I don't know if you do, but you might have beta readers or people that can look it over and things like that. Did you have to find different people to do that in English, obviously?
Yeah, a lot. I had, and I also have them for the scripts. I have always people reading also my English, checking at all levels, like people that will read. Not too many, because it gets confusing, and I tend to agree with whatever other people tell me. So I say, oh, you're right. So if I have, 6 people that are right, I always have to be sure I share it too broadly, because I tend to find it very relevant when I receive the comments. And for the English, I also have someone that checks, that there aren't terrible, red mistakes everywhere.
Yeah.
They just, oh my God, really?
I would ask about you. You talked there about writing one book and then translating it yourself into another language, and the kind of, it sounds almost like you're writing a different book. It's its own thing and its own, or its own process. And you've also adapted your own books into scripts, right? Because The Girls Are Good, you adapted the scripts yourself. And what's the process there? How does that compare to writing? Because it seems to me that must be quite similar in some ways, because you're translating it into not another language but another medium, and you're and what to keep and what to lose, and you're so close to it. Is that quite hard?
Yeah, I think it is hard in a way. I tend not to do it. For example, The Portrait is becoming a movie. I've decided not to write the script. I don't read it. I receive it. I can comment on it, but I didn't write it. And The Forest also is becoming a movie, and I was able to work on the script just once there was already a script, so I saw it in other shape. I wasn't too sure that I completely liked it or it worked, and I took it back secretly from everybody, and then I had to tell. And it was in Italian. I translated it into English to get a distance, because for me the shape of the forest was, the Italian novel. And I changed it completely, but because someone else had already changed it. And The Girls Are Good, I think I was able, because 15 years had passed. It didn't feel as my book anymore.
Okay.
And coming up with all arcs of and there were other 3 writers involved, and coming with the TV series really had to come up with new arcs, new lines, new characters, new shape. Like, was completely bombing whatever was there before. I think even who kills the person, like the murder is different. Like it's a revolution.
Wow, okay.
It's a revolution in terms of the story. And The Girls Are Good, it's interesting because in a way it came out in Italy when everything Ilaria Bernardini and the gymnasts and all the abuse in US, Australia, UK gymnastics hadn't happened yet. And it came out very silently in Italy when nothing of this had happened. And the book was just, very... Nothing happened, like sold not many copies, And then eventually 10 years after, all the Ilaria Bernardini things happen, and the abuse and everything. And so HarperCollins bought it from the previous publisher and said, there was that, book that was saying so many years ago that, they were abusing them, they took taking pills, they were anorexic, and so eventually it was even when it came out, all the landscape had changed. Like, Me Too hadn't happened before. Ilaria Bernardini hadn't happened. There was zero awareness.
Yeah.
Imagine in Italy about, body shaming or anything like that. So it was a very new way of going back into that story, because everything around it had changed. So we had all changed. I had changed as an author. In fact, I re-edited it for HarperCollins and for the series, and changed so many things that I myself hadn't noticed the first time I was writing something like that. And now I was able to say, I was sort of auto-silencing myself 10 years before.
It's interesting that HarperCollins, it would be interesting to know how they found it after those years, how they remembered and thought, right, we'll pull this one from the fire, if you like.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because in a way it could have been also that the producer, because I don't remember exactly, but it could also be that the production company that had decided to do the series on the tiny book, then it became something that was back on the radar. I think it was first the Italian little production company that then was Paramount Plus that decided to do the series. And so, yeah, maybe, yeah. But yeah, I'm not really sure. With the books, like things happen at the same time with many of the books, and I don't really, my memory is bad. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask as well, because I read that you worked with the Russo brothers on Citadel as well. And looking into that for this interview, it was unclear, because it's Citadel, because we've got a series called Citadel on Prime in the UK, but there also seems to be an Italian series called Citadel. Are they different series? Are they linked in some way, or is that a completely different thing?
Citadel is a complicated thing. So Citadel is all the Citadels that will be coming out. The Indian one, the French one, the Italian one are linked to the mother show, which is Citadel America, which is the one that you saw. All
Okay.
of them are a Russo brother production, and the idea, the experience of this series is that you can watch it either as a one show and then you go into the spin-offs. Either you can watch one show and then go on one of the characters and follow through once they will all be out. My Citadel, which is called Diana, that is going to be released probably in September, I think. It's one of the spies of the mother show, and then you will go on the story of this one. It's a very complicated, mega project of,
That's cool. It sounds very much like kind of MCU multiverse, kind of connected universe they've got going here.
I'm sure actually it's the first time it happens, because in every meeting, etc., they say, it's the first time you will be able to experience blah, blah, blah. But it's not all out there yet, so you cannot experiencing it that way, because this is the biggest show Amazon has ever done. Like it's a massive.
It was the most expensive show made TV. I read apparently. When it came out.
Yeah. And the Italian one, I think it's really beautiful. I just watched parts of it because everything is covered for such things of secrecy. So I know what I wrote, but you don't know anything about the others. You don't know. You can just. Like there are double secrecy things when you receive emails. It's a very weird Amazonian word.
So are you in like a writer's room for that then? Is it you and a bunch of writers that kind of sit down and hash stuff out together?
I'm one of the writers, and I wrote specifically like the scripts for 2 episodes entirely. So I think it's episode 4 and 5 of the show that will come out in January. And then you're also always, of the pieces that you can also working together on there's a massive Bible, there are legends, that it's a word that has been created. So there are things that everybody there are rules, things that you can do and you cannot do. And if someone changes something, which has happened in the American thing, you think you now have the story, but eventually if someone goes and changes even the tiniest bit in the mother show, then it's a domino effect on all productions.
Yeah, that's very cool. So what?
I wanted to try. I didn't know. I wanted to try the big scale thing. I didn't even know. But it was fun. Yeah.
Excellent. Nice. And we've got the We Will Be Forest coming out, I think you said in June in the UK. But what else is, and the Citadel later on in the year in Italy, but what else is in the pipeline?
So I've just finished writing this was already I'm not sure if it's finished because they can come back asking for more things, but I think I've finished writing then a movie for Martin Tildon, who's the Imitation Game director, amazing director. And so I think we have our last draft, at least the last draft for the phase we're in. So eventually this, I think it's going to happen next year. They're shooting a new movie I wrote in Italy called 10 Days in September. And it's in Italy, there are these things called cradle for life. When you are pregnant, you have a baby, but you don't want to be a mother. They're outside some of the hospitals. There are secret cradles for life where you can leave a kid and in anonymity, just go and nobody will come and chase you. And from the other side of the hospital, in 10 minutes, someone would be with that baby, and it's not a crime, and etc. It's to give the women the freedom of not having to say anything and just decide for themselves. But Italy being Italy, something went wrong last year, and a woman did this in Milan, and the entire country chased her in a way. Like, she did it and she left this baby in the great cares of an hospital. But the morning after, on all the papers and all the televisions, there were people saying, "Are you sure? Because you're the real mother, you should come back." Blah, blah, blah. And you have 10 days as a mother, as a woman, as a person, to decide if to come back.
No way. That's
you
interesting.
have the slight pressure of a country saying, "We give you money, just come back." We give you So I was so angry when there was this story, because you have no idea, of course, why the woman decided, is she going to be able to handle this pressure? I mean, just completely wrong. And so I immediately, I started writing, and I wrote it as a very long treatment, like 40 pages of this woman having to decide what to do. And whilst I was writing, I discovered that on the first day when this kid is left, an adoptive mother is called and said, maybe we have your kid. Maybe you have 10 days. So 2 mothers now,
Goodness, in limbo, just waiting. Yeah.
So I wrote the story
of
these two girls, women, mothers and non-mothers. And so that this is and this never happens because usually many other things I've been writing for 3 years, 4 years, projects collapse. And this, I don't know, maybe because it's really relevant at the moment, the debate about it. So it was now founded by the Italian national television, which is like the BBC there, it's Rai. And so they're shooting it, like I wrote it in May, I offered it to a director, and she immediately said yes. And those happy, never happening again kind of thing. And so they're doing that. Nice. And then various other, I'm meeting directors for The Forest. There are various things that are happening. Yeah.
Brilliant. Are you always working on multiple projects at once then, it sounds like?
Yes, in a way, yes. But I think it feels that it's multiple, but in a way, the timings are always very different. Like you feel you're still on a project, it's really the end. They never begin on at the same time, if not you die. But especially in movies, sometimes, they are just in a limbo for 10 months. And then suddenly there is a green light. For example, the girls are good at being in the making as a movie for 10 years. Then eventually that thing happened and it triggered the series. And it was like, in 6 months, we have to be ready. But for 10 years, I have been saying, it's becoming a movie. It wasn't. And eventually it did. But yes, it's usually multiple things. But the new book is just out in Italy. So I'm also touring with that. And novels that I own, it's not constantly. Like I don't think I'll be writing a novel for a little while.
What was the last book that you read?
I'm reading The Chronology of Water.
Okay.
I'm reading The Chronology of Water, which is incredibly strong and beautiful and sexy and devastating. And I know it was iconic and cult and everybody's been talking about it. I had completely missed out on that. And then I read also these days a beautiful book called Western Lane by Chetna Maru. It's this girl, it's in London, and it's these 3 girls that have lost their mother, and their father decides to help them through grief by training them with squash. It's beautiful.
Okay, cool. Nice.
Very beautiful.
What about the last film that you've watched?
I have to read out the name out loud from the thing because I cannot pronounce it well. It's called So Long, My Son.
Who's in that again? I know that.
He's a Chinese director. He won the Silver Bear in Berlin. I've been watching it for other reasons. It's not this recent.
Okay.
And it's incredibly beautiful. It's again.
Okay.
And it's this Chinese couple through 3 different decades. They have lost a kid, and then it's them in this landscape of China changing and their emotions changing throughout. Just incredibly beautiful.
Nice.
And what about TV shows? Are you watching anything?
I've watched Replay recently.
Oh yeah.
And I've watched Baby Reindeer. I'm a binger. I've watched everything there is to watch. What have you been watching?
We're watching Fallout at the moment. We're halfway through that, which I'm very much enjoying.
Shogun is what I'm watching at the moment, which is very good. But yeah, Baby Reindeer, everyone's talking about it.
I know, I've not watched it yet, but everyone says it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it's a bit like Misery. You remember the Stephen King?
Yeah.
With the
extreme fandom.
So,
awesome. Well, the very, very last thing we have is a super quick fire either or, and I always say there's no right answer here apart from perhaps one of them, but we'll start off with writing books or writing scripts.
How successful? Like director, like with Luca Guadagnino and Scorsese. I think for this second part of my life, scripts for maestros, like for incredible directors, so I can have, the inspiration, the teaching.
Excellent. Okay. TV or cinema?
Cinema, for sure.
Night owl or early bird?
Early bird.
Music or no music when you're writing?
Definitely music. Really a very useful tool for me. Without words, music.
Mm-hmm. And the last one, a paper book or an ebook?
I have to say I'm a big consumer of ebooks because I'm always traveling and I read in various languages. So I really love this access. I think it's brilliant. And at the same time, the ones I really love, I then rebuy them in paper. But also because of the beauty of the objects. No, I don't like these empty shelves we're suddenly, experiencing.
Exactly.
But if you had to pick one, it really sounds like you're saying ebooks are the best. Right?
I have to. You want to really teach us like, ebook does transform my. Yeah, it's really helpful. Yeah, ebook.
Excellent. It's amazing how few people pick ebooks. So I feel like I have to champion ebooks every opportunity.
It has really changed my life. Yeah.
Well, chalk up another winner for the ebook, Marco.
Yeah, it's
feeling a bit nervous
nice
over there.
Little start for this batch of episodes for you.
Yeah, I got a good feeling. Coming back strong.
I've not got a good feeling because we've already recorded some others. I know what they say. But yeah, you take that victory. But no, thanks very much to Ilaria for coming on. I thought that was really interesting. And, just the idea of being able to write in a different language so fluently that it can be published as a novel is an incredible skill. And I thought it was interesting what she said about, she writes very quickly in Italian. So when she wanted to write that story in English because it would make her pause and make her take her time and work over it a bit more. And, I suppose that in itself lends itself to a different type of storytelling if you're having to be more deliberately slow in the way that you're doing it and everything.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's, we kind of chatted about it on the podcast, but the whole idea that when you're translating a book, it's not just the words. And I know we've talked to other people about this before, but it's not just the words that you're translating from one language to another. It's the feeling, it's the tone, it's the voice you're trying to keep going. And that's really, I think that's the real skill when it comes to a translation.
Well, that's it. I mean, as she said, it's like, it's not, it becomes a different book in a way because you can't if you just literally translated the words, it wouldn't work. So as you say, you're having to get the tone and the meaning, which can sometimes mean you're probably doing an entirely different sentence in the book, but you're expressing what the intent was, I guess.
And I suppose it's something where if you're the one translating your own work, you're always going to know what the intention of the author was. I suppose that's the danger of a translation where you're not involved. You've no way of knowing. My book was translated into Serbian. I wouldn't have a clue.
Well, that's it. Although I
picked Serbian because it sounded like an exotic language. It could be French. I would also have no clue.
But as she said, maybe that's a good thing because you don't have that burden of worrying if it's right or not. You kind of you look at the cover and go, that looks pretty good. I like that cover.
That's my name. Yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
Unless it's in.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thanks very much to Ilaria anyway for coming on to the podcast. We Will Be Forest is just out this month, so you can pick that up now. We'll put a link in the podcast description. And as she said, Citadel, Diana, the sort of spin-off of the main show, is out, I think, in September this year. So that'll be exciting. I've not watched the main program yet either, but I'm going to try and do that before then as well. But next week, we've got another great author on the podcast.
We do indeed. We have the wonderful Con Iggulden on next week, who is a really, really fun guy to chat with. And he's written a whole bunch of really cool historical thrillers. Very much in the vein, I think, of someone like Robert Harris, that kind of picking a historical character. Nero, for instance, is his latest one, and writing about that person's life and the trials that they went through, etc. Much in the way that Robert Harris did for someone like Cicero.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really good chat. As I've said before, I don't really like reading a lot of history books, but I love a historical thriller because you're learning through the back door, which I quite enjoy.
and
So it's a good chat we have.
I've written historical fiction myself, so I always find it interesting to speak to other authors and see what their approach is to the real history, and I put that in air quotes because obviously you don't always know what the real history is, because sometimes these things conflict and sometimes the sources are missing and all that sort of stuff. So and what you take from that, what you don't take, how you turn it into, as you say, a very readable, exciting thriller based around these real events and real people that were there. So yeah, it's a really fun chat with Con. He was really good fun to have on. So yeah, do tune in for that one. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do take the time to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or whatever your favourite podcast app is, as that helps us to continue to get great guests on the podcast. And
if you want to get in touch, I'm going to tell you how to get in touch in just a moment. But before I do that, I have to get something off my chest. It's been playing on me for the last 5 minutes. We've been chatting here. I said a word wrong about 5 minutes ago, and I know I have to correct myself now.
Okay.
I said the word acrylic.
Like the paint.
When I talked about, yes. I think the word I was meaning to say was, is it Cyrillic?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Rather than just purely painted
people
on the cover. Is that what you meant?
Exactly. In case people thought that I thought that exactly. I'd seen my name painted in some kind of child's.
I mean, that could
style.
also be difficult to read, though, if it was badly painted. So, yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Good point. But anyway, it was more of a misspeaking rather than me being an idiot. So. Well, I'm an idiot, but not for that reason. Anyway, how to get in touch with us? There are a number of ways to get in touch with us. You can send us a tweet in the Twitter machine,
or whatever
which
is
at the X machine, which is at UK Page One. You can send us an email to podcast at rightgear.co.uk. It's been a while since I've done this.
That's right.
And you can find us across multiple social medias, in fact, not just X or Twitter. Just search for UK Page One.
And you will find us there. And you can also find our YouTube channel, which is linked in the podcast description well. And as I say, we have got full video interviews with all of our sort of industry expert guests there. We've also sometimes managed to get guests into our Edinburgh studio, and we've got those filmed as well.
Yes, always very exciting.
So yeah, plus we put every podcast up on there in an audio version as well. So you can follow us there if that's your app of choice. But as we say, we've got another great guest next week, so we will speak to you then.
See you later.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please leave a comment down below, hit that thumbs up button, and be sure to hit that subscribe button as well, so you never miss an episode like these ones below.
And if you want to get in touch, you can always drop us a tweet in the Twitter machine, which is at UK Page One, as evidenced here, and our other social media channels are available.
Otherwise, we hope to see you next episode.
See you later.